given ethnic ID cards by by the colonialists, you know. And how do we see that? How do we see the same indices playing out here in Nigeria? In the same instance, if you check the roots of every Nigerian, for example, I can tell you one thing. As a Buraman, we trace our roots back all the way to Yemen, Nile Valley, that area, and you'll be surprised to find out that the Benin trace their roots back there too. The Ijaw, when you go far back enough, trace their roots back there too. You know, we are all ultimately distant relatives. Ultimately, you know, and what happened was, for ease of administration, then the British split the country up into the north, you know, which they were huge north, and what they did is they put together people of similar cultures, but very there were also very key differences, you know, put everything together. Now the danger this portends for Nigeria, as opposed to the Rwandan situation, is simply this. I have mentioned this, I think, just a couple weeks ago here, you know, on one of your programs, about the 3 or 4 behemoths in Nigeria that caused the problem: Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, Fulani. You know, each insisting on their own rights, and I have referred to the minorities. You know, the sprinkling of 100 and something others, who, when you really look at the numbers, when you put them together, are actually a majority in comparison to any one of these. You know, if you put all of them together. Yeah. You know, but these are the ones who, because they cannot stake any geographical claim, you know, like I said, it's easy for the Yoruba to stake a claim to the southwest, you know, but it's particularly difficult. It's easy for the Igbo to stake a claim to the southeast, you know, but for the minority tribes, you find them spread out over sometimes 2, 3, 4 states. For some, you find only about 300,000, maybe in 1 or 2 states, you know. And this is the situation. The problem is always refusing to concede, refusing to back down one for another, and seeing things from that ethnic perspective. That, for me, is where the problem lies. Now, the challenge of ethnicity would not arise if there was fairness and justice. Once there is justice, once there is fairness, the situation, the problem of this ethnicity does not even arise. It's not a problem, you know. Where you find a challenge is where people begin to wonder or ask questions about who is on top, you know, is where you feel your rights are trampled upon, specifically because of your ethnicity or your religious inclination, you know, or some other primordial sentiment, you know. And for me, I think in that area, we as a people need to wake up a lot to these truths. When you allow these fissures, when you allow these fault lines to go very deep, which is what we have done as a people, when you allow the fault lines to go as deep as we have done here in Nigeria, you end up, unfortunately, with the potential for crisis. What happened in Rwanda was simply a response to an unfortunate situation. But the major problem was there were many fault lines, and it was simply a little tremor that was required to exacerbate the entire situation. The moment something happened to the Hutu leader, you know, it was immediately interpreted along such lines, you know. Remember when the vice president's helicopter
crashed.
had a challenge? Yes, exactly. all kinds of connotations immediately began to come in. And the reason is simply because there are fault lines that already exist. What we must, as a people, do is work towards not even smoothing over, but defining where these problems lie, dealing comprehensively with the issues. Where we need to win trust, we must do so again. There are actions by those in the position of power that could be interpreted or misinterpreted to be sectionalist. And what kind of actions? Let's get to issues we're dealing with as a people. As a people. I remember marching with this young lady, Kadaira. Last year, we marched together with the Enough is Enough group. I remember DJ Dayanju was there, Charlie Boy was there, and we marched together. I remember seeing a neighbor of mine, and I was mildly, I was actually surprised and very impressed because he's a retired director, in the civil service. But what made him step out was simply because of what we were marching for, and the issue was Nigerian lives matter. Stop the killings. And that time when we came out, it was as a cry for some form of, we were expecting something more substantial from the center. The reason was quite simple. If I am Chris, the only reason you are seated where you are seated right now and anchoring this program is not because you are chummy with your GM.
Nah.
You understand? You are here because ostensibly you're the best so far that they can find to do what you do. That's the simple truth. Yes, I know you're trying to play it down, but that's the simple truth, because organizations are concerned about the output and its efficiency that they're looking towards. Why is it that when we come to the area of governance, what we have had in the area of security, would we have permitted it? Would we have permitted it if these were private organizations being run this way? So these are issues that one needs to look at, and then one needs to deal with concisively, because there are situations that could help to exacerbate already existing fault lines.
Okay, let me put you on pause for a second and introduce the next guest. We have Mr. Remi Adebayo. He's a journalist and also a social commentator. He joins us on the show this morning. It is a pleasure to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
We're taking a look at Rwanda. The weekend they celebrated the 25th anniversary since the end of the genocide, which happened in 1994, which saw almost 1 million people killed, of course. But then we're asking the question because it would appear to be that there were some similarities to some of the issues we have presently as a nation. Fault lines being, exploited. The Hutus and the Tutsis, who was superior, and in fact, one of them was being labeled as cockroach. If you were from a particular tribe, you'd be labeled a cockroach, and you'd be asked to be killed, and all of that. And we may not have gotten to that point, but there appears to be some, fault lines that we also do have, and sometimes it will seem as though those fault lines get to be exploited, even maybe not to the extent to which they were exploited in Rwanda. And then the question we're asking this morning is, what lessons do you think are there for Nigeria to learn? It's not that we've not had ours. We had the Civil War, but what lessons do you think are there for Nigeria to learn, especially given how they've been able to rise above all of that and become the country they are at the moment?
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Paul, for meeting you again this morning. Yes, the history of Rwanda is one that would touch an ordinary African. I think right from 1959, when the monarchy that was led by the Tutsi was replaced, overwhelmed, and it was overthrown And the population of the country itself, we are talking about a country that is about, the latest population census says 11.2 million people. So you can see that
that's even less than the population of Lagos.
yeah, so it's a very, very small country. But you can see that if you want to aggregate how a country like that should be ruled, you will expect that as a very compact country, there should be some form of cohesion and unity between the two ethnic groups, the Hutus who are in the minority and the Tutsis, in the majority, and the Tutsis who are actually the minorities. But right from 1959, when that played out, there had been ethnic tension between the two. And that led progressively up to 1994, when the plane carrying the president of Rwanda and I think Burundi,
Yeah.
and when that plane was shot down, and there was ethnic tension immediately interpreted to mean that it was the RPF, that's a Rwandan Patriotic Front, that carried out the attack. And since that time, it became 100 days of hell on earth in that country. At the end of the day, more than 800,000 lives were lost and many displaced. The neighboring countries, of course, Uganda, Somalia, and all this had to play host to a lot of people. And the gory part of it was how people were hacked to death. We had a similar situation at the point in Nigeria, I think, among the Ife Modakekes, when that war was playing out, that if an Ife husband had a Modakeke wife, you have to kill one. Because if you don't kill, somebody else will be killed. So that happened in Rwanda, where the Hutus must kill the Tutsi's wife because of tension, mutual suspicion, disrespect for each other. And that the funniest or the agonizing part of it was that a peace deal was signed in 1993, which would have played down the tension in that country. But the plane crash that happened, there was back and forth about this, that you did it, yeah. I didn't do it. In fact, the Tutsis, who were the victims, were even blaming the Hutus that they carried out that attack so that they could have excuse to attack the Hutus, who were then, although they were in the minority, but there was this insinuation that they were holding on to power. Yeah. So we have a lot to learn as a country. We are just talking about people of those two ethnic domination. Nigeria has over 250 ethnic nationalities. When we are playing our games here, you know that we have always been thinking about the three dominant ethnic settings: the Yorubas, the Hausas, the Igbos. What happens to the minority Ibibio, the Anang, the Kanuris, and a lot of other nationalities that you cannot tell of? Good enough and kind enough for us, the crafters of our laws had that in mind. They knew that Nigeria was not going to sit on those three tripod standards we used to say. So there was the crafting of the federal character in our system to give accommodation to every sector or every nationality to belong or to feel to belong to Nigeria, to be accommodated, to be tolerated, and to be taken along in decision makings, and to be part of the consequences of the decision that they made. But if you ask me, if you spread out the spreadsheet of Nigerian leadership structure, apart from when we have mainly, maybe when we say we have the ministers, is that what plays out? Are every other nationalities in this country, are they involved in governance? Go to states that are well dominated by other ethnic groups. Are those splinter or minor groups taken along in those places? I know that it's not just even religious man, and good enough. I think Rwanda has almost is kind of a Christian balanced nation. And if that could happen, it means we have a lot to do. But now, the period of 100 days passed. I think you remember how that problem was solved. even the international communities, those that should help Rwanda, they turned their back at them. They didn't do anything. It was the exiled RPF people that had to mobilize again to sweep on the country again to get a solution.
Led by the present president.
Led by the President Kagame.
Okay, let me get back to Mr. Sawa, because there were certain things you mentioned earlier when you talked about Rwanda and their history. For example, the division, deliberately or not, that was forced on them by their colonial masters, the Belgians. And as you said, they were giving ethnic cards, and I mean, till this day, okay, maybe not till this day, but up until that point, in 1994, it was very, very severe, and those fault lines were very, very obvious, and they were exploited, to the maximum. And then you're tempted to ask yourself the question, when you take a look at Nigeria, and you look at what happened in 1914, you also made reference to that, because of the need for easier governance, different parts of the country were, put together. Do you think, when you take a look at some of the fault lines we do have, today in Nigeria, do you think maybe all of that would have been avoided if there was no amalgamation of 1914?
Well, the fact is this. Many nations, when you find together, are a concatenation of all sorts, strange bedfellows. But how far back in history do we want to go? Where do we draw the line? If we're going to keep going back, at all times, let's go back to the beginning. As a theist, as someone who believes in one supreme being, I believe in creationism. And for that reason, since I believe in a creation and a creator, one of the lessons I believe in, and I believe most Nigerians do, because most Nigerians find themselves under either the Christian or the Muslim faith, believe in the story of the Tower of Babel, where the tower was brought up and the languages were divided. Let's get something very clear. The division of tongue was never a blessing. It was a curse. Let's get back to the origin of matters.
Biblically, you mean?
Biblically. And the division of tongue and ethnicity was never a blessing. It was not. The blessing is unity. The blessing is unity. You have one God who creates all equal underneath him. That is the blessing. And so if we want a solution, we need to stop deepening the lines of division. I have always had a challenge with our commentary that insists on regionalism, for example, because what it is doing is deepening these lines. After, if you remember, after our civil war, we came up with how many states? The essence was to break the regional dichotomy.
Stronghold.
That was the essence, so that we all see ourselves as one people, as a Nigeria. When we look back, without doubt, what happened with the creators of Nigeria was, at that time, the least of their concerns was us. It was their immediate interests were exploitative. And divide and rule is very effective. Very, very effective. It's easier to keep control. We need it's normal. We've seen, even in the story of Pharaoh and the children of Israel, they were uncomfortable. There are too many. They may unite with our enemies against us. So we will oppress them. So oppression is intended to keep these fault lines are there. And I would just feel that when you look at where my brother made a statement, or was it you, about what happened in Rwanda, about where they refer to people as cockroaches. Now I'm going to rustle the waters here a little. We've long passed that. We've done that here. If you wouldn't know, for any Hausa speaker listening, when you say the term Kwaro, what does Kwaro mean? It's a bug. But that was a general term referred to Southerners. I'm a Northerner, I'm telling you this. But the interesting situation is this. This was a term that was referred, that as a child growing up, was really common You know, you grow up picking these things without even knowing the import. But then you travel, you mix. You understand? And then you realize, no, this is offensive. And I can tell you without a doubt, and this is a plus for us as a people, I can't remember the last time I heard anybody use that statement today. I say this in all truth. In all truth. And for me, I feel that is a significant leap forward. You understand? For one reason or other, it's become disinteresting. It is not. I haven't heard it used for the 20 plus years. I haven't heard that term used. But there was a time, you know, and it means that whoever coined that term, the question you would ask is what kind of perspective they have. How do they look at their fellow human being across an ethnic divide? What we must do as a people today, and what we must avoid, is we need to see something. You talked about international a disregard for this confusion that happened. Why do you think so? At that point, what does Rwanda, how much does Rwanda have to offer? Guys, we've got oil. We've got oil. And one of the challenges here is, as much as it can be a blessing, it can be a curse. Because there are interests. What happened in Libya was basically exacerbated by foreign interests. You know? And in the same sense here, when you have a leadership class that are significantly dominated by people who act based on greed, selfish interests, it's very easy for international players to toy with the sensibilities and to use such ones as willing or unwilling pawns in a dangerous power play. We see what happened in Libya. You know, they played along already existing divisions. You have various tribal lords, and so what we simply do is typical play: empower the opposition, or the disgruntled ones. You know, and then subsequently you empower everybody, and then let them knock each other out. And once there's enough confusion, we can come in under the pretexts of humanitarian military aid. You understand? And we will be there for the next 30 years until we suck that oil dry. That is another dangerous thing we're playing with. You know, remember what happened in 2015 elections, just before the elections. There were helicopters in
the Gulf?
No, Ghana.
Okay.
In Accra, at the airport. There were huge American military helicopters positioned with Marines on standby there in Ghana, just before the 2015 elections. That was expected to break down into a free-for-all. Well, what happened? And what were they there for? Do you think they were there to come in to assist? No, they were there to evacuate American citizens. You understand? Each nation, first and foremost, every responsible nation is first, most importantly, concerned about their own citizens. Mm-hmm. You understand? As the Nigerian people should be. But such actions should wake us up, you know, to the fact that nobody is going to put this thing together for us.
Okay.
It is a decision that must be made by Nigerians. If we want this nation to work, this family that we have found ourselves in, it's a simple question of willingness, you know, to pool our sources and interests together and to work together.
All right, we'll have to go on a break right now. When we come back, we will continue with the conversation this morning. We're taking a look at the 25th anniversary of the Rwandan Genocide. What lessons are there to be learned for Nigeria? We'll continue the conversation when we come back, and also we'll get you involved. Do stay tuned to this Talk Nigeria and Greetings on 5.7. Nice to have you back on the show, Talk Nigeria and Greetings on 5.7. We're discussing the 25th anniversary of the Rwandan Genocide, and what lessons are there to be learned by Nigeria. I have two gentlemen with me in the studio. Mr. Paul Sawa, who is a sustainable landscape expert, an author and a social commentator, is here with us. And also Mr. Remi Adebayo, a journalist and a social commentator as well. Both gentlemen are here with us in the studio this morning. Mr. Adebayo, now as it is, still talking about the Rwandan experience and what lessons we can learn. It is now illegal to ascribe any tribe to yourself in Rwanda. You are a Rwandan. You are not Tutsi, you are not Hutu. You are a Rwandan. Do you think we might need something of such in Nigeria? And even if we do have it, how effective can it be really? But before you comment, let's open the phone lines so our listeners can join the conversation as well. To be a part of the show this morning, simply dial 070-1057-0088 or 070-1057-0909. You can call us via any of those numbers, or you send us text messages, the regular text or WhatsApp text, to 070-1057-0025. It is Talk Nigeria and Britain's 15.7. So let's get to you, Mr. Adebayo.
Thank you very much, Chris. It is illegal in Rwanda today to refer to yourself either as a Hutu or Tutsi. I think that came on the strength of the leadership that President Paul Kagame provided. Having been himself an active player and someone who was aware about the remote and the causes behind the killings and the murders that happened in his country. If you want to play down to Nigeria, the ethnic elimination in that country, how well do we think we can integrate it? They even went further. Now, I was saying the other time that one of the healing process that happened in that country, immediately after the conflict, the genocide left a lot of people fatherless, motherless, a lot of people lost relatives and close loved ones. And in the process, they had to be saying that they were giving children to existing families. Regardless of who you are, whether you are Tutsi or whatever, any child could just be placed under your care. If that child grows up tomorrow, that child is not going to grow up as a Hutu or as a Tutsi. That child is going to grow up as a Rwanda. And this, to me, says a lot. And by 2020, they are planning to close all orphanages in that country. Now, what does that mean? It means that the country has progressed significantly on the part of national reconciliation. And when there's reconciliation, when there's truth, it brings healing. And when there's healing, the country can progress. Nigeria needs such. We have to go back to eliminate all those vices that we consider to be our dividing lines. And I think we have everything that can help us in the preamble of the Nigerian Constitution. Chris, see what it says. We, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity and in harmony as one indivisible and indissoluble sovereign nation under God, dedicated to the promotion of inter-African solidarity, world peace, international cooperation, and understanding, and to provide a constitution for the purpose of what? Promoting the good governance and welfare of all persons in our country, on the principle of freedom, equity, and equality and justice, for the purpose of consolidating the unity of our nation. See, the principles are well clear, very, very clear enough for us. If we have strong leadership, like what Kagame is producing or providing in that country, Rwanda now, that can drive this country in a process where the welfare of all Nigerians occupies the mind of the leaders of Nigeria, where opportunities are not reserved for a section of the country, where there's an impenetrable wall that sees you first as Hausa, Fulani, Hausa, Ibibio, Anango, anything, before you can have or access your privileges and opportunities as a Nigerian. We must take that from Rwanda. Just 25 years after genocide, Rwanda is on top of the 10 fastest growing economy in Africa. That country has placed behind it the heroes and the fault lines of the past. Now, at this level, we still have killings going on in this country. People are still dying every day. Whether it is in Kaduna South, whether it is in Zamfara, whether it is in Yobe, anyway, people are still dying. And you see that there may be the need. We may not call it Truth and Reconciliation Committee. We have done that in the past. We need a strong leadership that will bring all Nigerians together, to see Nigeria as one, to eliminate the tribal or ethnic identities. Nigeria must first see ourselves as one, and somebody must set the pace for that. And sincerely, that man or that woman has to be from the top down the line.
Okay, Mr. Sawa, the other time you were here, we didn't exactly discuss this in depth, but we sort of touched on it. And when you take a look at Rwanda, for example, just like Mr. Adebayo said, they're one of the fastest growing economies on the continent. And, Paul Kagame has, he's definitely going to have his faults and all that, but he's done a remarkable job of, one, uniting the country and make them economically,
strong,
at least to a reasonable extent. But then you take a look at Nigeria, and it's just been 25 years, which they celebrated at the weekend. And why is it difficult for us to have a similar thing? Why is it difficult for us to have a coming together? Could it be because of our size? Maybe we're just too big to have such a coming together where everybody identifies as a Nigerian. Instead of you identified as a Nupi man, I identify as an Ibibio man, Mr. Remy identifies as an Efik man, and what have you. And then also, you take a look at what happened in Rwanda. After the genocide, they came together, they had a national conversation and said, this was what happened. Let's reconcile. You've hurt us, we have hurt you. Let's reconcile and move forward.
I think that is where
Now, 49 years later, we don't seem to have had a national conversation on the civil war.
I think this is the issue. I mentioned this, if you remember, on one of your programs
yes.
earlier. The South Africans enjoyed the
Truth and Reconciliation.
Yes. And that healed. It was born on many open wounds. You heard Prince Ike, one of the callers that just called recently, and you could hear the vexation, and the sense of pain in his voice. You can't wish away.
Sorry, before you continue, let's open the phone lines again so we can get more contributions. The phone lines are open for you to call in 070-1057-0088 or 070-1057-0909, or you send us a text message to 070-1057-0025. We're discussing the Rwandan experience and what Nigeria can learn from it. Mr. Paul.
All right then. Like I mentioned, so what is necessary is having my brother here has pointed out to us very clearly the fact that our constitution actually makes provision for a lot of this. When you look at, for example, the NYSC programs that we have, just to build on what he said, interestingly, he says Nigerians intrinsically are patriotic. You just need to watch our football matches, and that's when you just see the lines disappear.
Or when some other people from some other country insults anything Nigerian.
And you will see us unite around our jollof.
Yes, exactly.
Without a doubt.
Exactly.
Without a doubt. But it's sad that you see this does not translate into the echelons of power. Instead, it is exploited by those who desire power, to propel themselves into that position and not realizing the danger. Now, he talked about the quality of leadership, and I agree, that matters. I believe in the 5 Ps. I've coined them down in my book. The 5 Ps are purpose, plan, process, product, and preservation. You begin with a purpose. How many of our leaders have a clear purpose? There must be a very clear purpose. Kagame understood the purpose. Mandela understood is purpose. That's what makes a prolific leader. There must be a purpose. That is the fundamental actuating objective upon which we all take off. That's the foundation. That's the essence that makes up the rest. Now, having defined a purpose, now if we look at our people, as a nation, you understand, the Chinese nation have a purpose. You understand? They charted out 200-year, ahead plan, and they stuck to it. They have a purpose. When you have a purpose, you put together your plan. You understand?
It has to be your plan.
You put together your plan based on that purpose, that uniting purpose as a people. And then the plan now undergoes process. That is where it needs to be driven. And that plan must be driven regardless of which party is in power. It's supposed to be held sacrosanct. You do not touch that. That is why America is what it is today. You talked about size possibly being a problem. Why is size not working against China or India? It's supposed to be a plus. The numbers that we have, that we seem bereft of ideas on what to do, are actually a veritable economic workforce that could propel this nation, to heights that we never, even imagined. Imagine if we let loose the under 35s, in an environment that encouraged their creativity. Imagine what they would do. Because when you pull them together and you see what they are contributing to the most advanced societies all over the globe. I know a student who was unable to get admission in Abuja, in Kaduna here. He ends up in Malaysia, and he comes up with a robot, and the school is applauding him. So we have systems and structures that frustrate the best. And intrinsically, the Nigerian is generally peace-loving, generally fun-loving, and generally would be patriotic. But patriotism is not something you are born with. It is something that you must be conditioned to understand and to accept. And it's a two-way street. It's give and take. I stand by my nation, sink and swim, because I expect that my nation will stand by me.
And then it boils down to what John F. Kennedy said. Think not what your nation will do for you.
But what you can do.
And then the question, a lot of Nigerians would ask is, what exactly has Nigeria done for me that would make me want to think of what I would do for Nigeria? So before we go, as we round up on the show this morning, Mr. Adebayo, one of the contending issues, one of the issues that has been raised that a lot of people believe has also contributed in the fault lines we have, the divisions we have, is this issue. I mean, it sort of sounds innocent, but a lot of people believe it must have contributed or may have contributed significantly to the fault lines we have. State of origin.
Yes.
Well, for example, somebody who was born in Lagos, somebody who grew up in Lagos, and then you're told you are not from Lagos, you can't run to become the governor of Lagos. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in Austria. He grew up in fact, he didn't leave Austria until he was 14 years old. That was when he went to the United States, and he became the governor of California. So, how then do we address the issue where somebody who was born, for example, maybe to parents from the Southeast, when he was born in Kafanchan, and then they say, oh no, you can't become the governor of Kaduna State because you're not from Kaduna.
So much to look into when it gets to the issues of state of origin and state of residency. It has really elicited a lot of conversation and narratives around whether it should be retained or it should be stopped. The Great Sikh of Africa, the former Nigerian president, was actually, he was born in Zungeru, at the present-day Niger State.
Yes.
Somebody like the late Chief Bola Ige, I think he was born down, but he was raised in the north. He could speak almost Hausa language like any other person. You have a lot. I've met a lot of. There's one lady that I met when I was in Cross River State. I spent 6 years in that state. She speaks Yoruba language. She could even speak other dialects like Ijebu and everything. It took me long before I knew that she wasn't actually a Bibio lady. So Nigeria has the potential to outgrow ethnic inclination, or do I say it? Holding ethnic grip to become the Nigerian that we're supposed to be. I wouldn't know, even if Zik had lived today, if he wanted to become the chairman of Zungeru local government, if there's something like that, if the people of that particular area would give him the chance, you know, except for Lagos that has gone a bit metropolitan that could, I mean, you know.
But even at that, those fault lines, when they became very evident.
Yes, I remember when the Oba of Lagos said that maybe some people will be thrown into the lagoon.
Exactly.
You see, this is where we are talking about the leadership. We should have a personality that is so nationally driven. We don't have, to me, we have not had the Nigerian president in the real sense of someone that is so nationalistic about Nigeria to be saying, no, I am this, I'm not a Yoruba, I'm not Igbo, I'm a Nigerian. That is what we should grow, and that is what we should grow. I am part of this. I support the drive to eliminate state of origin.
Okay.
I have lived in Abuja for more than 10 years. I should be able to become anything in Abuja or anywhere.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, so let's take this message before we go. One of our own post-Civil War remedy was the elimination of history as a subject in our national curriculum to prevent the unborn generations from knowing the truth. Justice is the sole balm to heal our collective wounds. Ebuka from Pape. Now, as we leave this morning, my parting shot will be this. We have a whole lot of Nigerians who travel to the UK, to the US, to Canada, to wherever, to have kids. And after these kids are born, they get passports of those countries or wherever they were born, and they become citizens. How would you feel if in Nigeria, you say somebody is not an indigene, or somebody is not from, for example, Kebbi State, despite the fact that that person was born in Kebbi State, but because these are parents, were not from Kebbi State, you say that person is not from Kebbi State. How would you feel if after having your child in the US, and the US government says to you, we can't give you a passport, you're not an American, your parents are from Nigeria? How would you feel about that? So that's where I would leave it, and that's where we leave it on the show this morning. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming. Mr. Remi Adebayo,
thank you.
Joining us, the social commentator, and also Mr. Paul Sawa, sustainable landscape expert and author, and the social commentator as well. Thank you very much for coming. And for the text messages and the phone calls, we're very grateful. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, when we discuss issues like this, trust me, 1 hour is never enough to do justice to it. But we got to do what we got to do. And yes, we got to go right now. My name is Chris Ogogo. The show will return same time tomorrow. But in whatever you do, remember that we're a great nation. God bless Nigeria. God bless you all. Good morning.